And yeah, so title is app submission, and so they did a little switcheroo with the workshop. So if you're looking for the intermediate workshop, it's not in this room anymore, it's in the other one. So feel free to switch around. Yeah, so the focus of this talk is basically how to submit your app, but also using sort of the PhoneGap CLI tools, and just kind of that connection. Yeah. So we got 3 sort of app stores that we can submit to: iOS, Apple, Google, and Windows. Is everyone here submitting to a Windows store at all? No? Oh, you are? Oh, perfect. I guess the rest is iOS and Android. Yeah. And a good chunk of this talk is actually just about iOS because it's there's a lot of overhead, you know.
It's painful.
Huh? Yeah, it's painful. It's definitely painful. Hopefully that stays. It seems to be a little shoddy of the connection. But anyways, yeah. So the majority of this talk is going to be about iOS, just because it requires so much overhead and understanding sort of the pain points, which there are definitely a lot of. But first things first, I mean, obviously if you want to submit to these app stores, oh, by the way, the sort of the format of this talk is going to be kind of like mostly lecture, and then, you know, if you want to ask questions, feel free to ask a question, or just keep it pretty chill, I guess. And after I'm kind of done the lecture portion, you know, you could do more hands-on to actually help you sign an app if you want. Anyways, yeah. So, but before everything, submitting to an app store, you obviously need the accounts for the particular app stores. It's pretty dry, but like obviously you need an iOS developer account, which costs $99 a year. You want to submit to the Apple App Store, and every developer will need their own Apple ID. And the interesting thing about the Apple App Store, especially if you're working as a team or in a company, is that the Apple App Store has kind of like this, it has infrastructure to kind of support people to, you know, to become members, to give privileges, and who can sign and what. Whereas in Google and Windows Phone Store, they don't really have that. So if you're part of a company and you want to submit apps as a company, whoever owns like, the account for the Google Play and the Windows Phone Store is like, they're going to have to share that account, which is kind of dicey because, you know, it's a bit of a security risk. And so, for example, at Adobe, the Google Play Store is kind of run by this one guy, and he's got 2-factor auth. And so if you want access to the store, you basically got like email him saying, like, hey, I want access. I'm going to like sign in now, and he'll get the 2-factor auth code, and he'll like phone you and say, here, the code is this, and you'll sign in and you'll have the credentials. It's kind of funny. And the Windows Phone Store is even more interesting because they don't allow simultaneous logins. So at Adobe, we have this one Windows box that you remote desktop into, and that's like the box that you use to like deal with the dev store there. It's kind of weird, but it's what you gotta do. Anyways, yeah. So for the Google Play Store, same kind of thing about paying a fee. It's just a one-time fee of $25, and you gotta set up a Google Wallet merchant account. So if you ever sell anything through your app or whatever, it all gets collected there. So, well, it makes some money. You gotta set that up. And for the Windows Phone Store, it's a one-time fee of $19, or as an individual, or you can pay $99 as a company. I don't know what the actual sort of difference is between the two because I never got a chance to set up between either. I assume Adobe's on the company plan, but hopefully they're offering you a little more than an individual account for $99. All right, so moving on into the real meat of this talk is basically packaging. In order to submit your app to the App Store, you really want to make sure all your ducks in a row. Things are set in a way that you're not changing them around too much. So if you take a look at your Config Xml, it's a very important file terms of app submission, in that there's a few values in there that should definitely not change. For example, your app or your widget ID right here. This is something that once you set, don't mess around with that, because if you upload an app with a certain ID and you try to upload it again, the App Store will reject you, and you might be scratching your head why. It's a pretty good reason why. So don't mess around with that. And with a version code, the app stores follow a major, minor, patch sort of format. So however you want to kind of manage that your own, I guess it's really up to you, but try to always upload versions of your app in increasing order. Otherwise, during the submission process, the verification step might say like, oh, you're trying to upload an older app, and we don't like that, so you get rejected. So make sure you kind of look out for that. And yeah, so other kind of things that kind of populates are your App Store listings, or like the name of your app, the description, just kind of gets ported right into there. Of course, you can always modify it later, but once you set it once, it's kind of nice to just have it there.
I have a question on this. Is there any on the version thing? Is that's completely independent from the Xcode version?
Completely independent.
Because there's an issue with uploading the right. At least it's very confusing on the App Store. The versions need to be in order there also. Yeah,
they always should be in increasing order. So start with 1, and then whatever change you do, like 1.01, or if it's a more major than that, 1.10, or eventually 2.0, but always go increasing.
But the App Store, does it see these?
Yeah, it does see those. So if you actually go to the App Store, like, I'll just do it right now really quickly. Alright, I'm going to hide something from you guys, because I don't want to show you. This is like the Adobe stuff, so I had it logged in. Which one is that?
Just unplug for a second, Tim.
Huh?
Just unplug for a second.
Alright, I'll try and plug it. Yeah, so when you upload your version code, it'll port over to the App Store, and you'll see whatever version you kind of uploaded gets in there. So if I can just log it. Okay, I'll plug it back in. I might have to do that a couple times, because I don't want to show you all the Adobe stuff, I'm afraid. Okay. So you can see here on the right side, or the left side, I got this 1.5.13. That's our last sort of release. And if I go over here, you can see this is the version there. So when I build my app, upload it to the App Store.
But the Xcode has a version in it also.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. So the same thing kind of happens in Xcode too. Is like when you build your app. Like, is this the thing you're talking about?
Yeah. So
yeah, that also gets your Config Xml also gets populated there too.
So they should be kept in sync, or doesn't it matter?
I would recommend only touching your Config XML in terms of the version code. That way, you're just modifying one place. So if you're, for example, developing for Android and Windows Phone, you don't want to be messing around with like the platform files of those particular projects, because then you might diverge by accident. So the Config XML is the easy way to kind of just keep all that information central.
So that the Xcode picks that off the Config XML?
Yeah, it takes it from the Config XML.
Okay.
So when you run like PhoneGap build or prepare, I believe that's the step that puts all that information in there. And then a lot of the other kind of like values kind of do the similar thing. So you can see here like the app ID is your widget ID. So those values get ported over too. All right, moving on. And if you want to like kind of figure out, there's a lot of values in the Config Xml, so like splash screen, notification icons, and all that kind of stuff. You can read this doc. It goes into it a little more in depth. It's a little, really did not like that. Sec here. Whoa. Uh-oh. Alright, I'm gonna stop sharing.
Is it the dongle?
Don't think so. Can someone call the IT guy?
Yeah, search know where he is and
You try turning it off and turning it back on again?
Yeah, let's try plugging and plugging.
meantime between IT crowd references.
Maybe that did it. It's not flickering anymore. Oh, it's flickering again. Well, I don't know if you want to keep on looking at this. If I hide this.
Where you use it, plug it.
Huh? Just this dongle here. Getting some flicker. It's sharing pretty good.
Yeah.
Looks like it.
Yeah, I've got it down.
Did you?
Oh. Yeah, let's scroll down to it.
Back to it.
Okay. Sorry, folks. Oh, really? All right. Yeah, I guess we're back.
Running, okay.
Is there a way to maximize that again, or are we left that way? Yeah. So I gotta go into display sex. All right. Guess that'll do. All right. Where was I? Yeah, so if you want to more into the config XML file, we got docs for that. It's Cordova-Apache.org. I'm sure you can just find it right here under config. Oh, where's my mouse? Right there. And you can go through the various sort of values there. I'll be talking about it a little more later, though, right when you're ready to submit. All right, so starting with iOS. If any of you have ever packaged iOS apps, you know it's super painful sometimes where provisioning profiles or just certificates are yelling at you when you're trying to do PhoneGap build for release. And I remember, like, when I was building for the developer app, I run across these issues quite a few times. And it took me a little while to kind of wrap my head around it. And luckily, I had Chaz in the back there, who's our iOS lead, to tell me exactly the kind of magic I need to do to fix it. And I'll be going over kind of the troubleshooting tips to help you out there. And hopefully, you'll be able to fix your own problems too. But the first thing that you should do if you really do want to submit your app.
Sorry, Tim, do you want to maximize your Chrome window?
Oh, that's a good idea. Get rid of these stuff. All right, there we go. So you're obviously going to need an App Store kind of record for your app. And the first thing you got to do is create an app ID. And when you create this app ID, it's really important for certificates and like provisioning profiles later on. So you want to pick something that's not going to change and it's pretty good. And yeah, if you go through the wizard, you can set an explicit app ID. You give your bundle ID, which should match that config ID here, ideally. And that's why you also don't want to change that value either, because once you change this value, once you try to upload again, like I said, it's going to be really confused. So keep it as is. You can do wildcard ID, but that's for managing for a lot of apps and for managing sort of the app services. So after you create that app ID, it'll ask you kind of the services that you want to attach to the particular thing, where you can add on like push notifications, Game Center, etc., etc. But it's pretty important to know that when you set these settings, when you generate the certificates on these, it's going to have these app services attached to that certificate. So later on, if you're developing your app and you want to add in something that you didn't add before, it's most likely you're going to have to regenerate your certificates. Otherwise, when you try to compile and upload to the App Store, it's going to yell at you. So that's one thing to remember. I actually had that done recently to me where I was developing a developer app, and Simon here with his push notifications got merged into the dev app, and I didn't have the right certificates. I couldn't build it anymore, so I had to regenerate the certificates. So that's one thing to know. So the thing about certificates is they come in two flavors. There's development and there's just distribution. So in development, this is taken right off the Apple Docs, it identifies you as a team member and development provisioning profile that allows apps signed by you to launch on devices. So if you're just kind of like your developer and you're not going to release, you're just kind of in the process of developing and just kind of testing, that's what you want to use. Whereas a distribution certificate identifies you as a team or organization and distribution provisioning profile and allows you to submit to the store. And only a team agent or admin can create the distribution certificate. So in the member center, you have to have the credentials to create a distribution certificate. So if you can't create one, it'll be grayed out unless you're an admin. So that's one thing to also remember as well. And I usually have a development certificate and distribution certificate. It's good to have both. The distribution certificate should be widely spread throughout your team if you're all developing it. It's like the most secure certificate that you should keep most secure, because if someone gets a hold of that, they can upload to the app in your name. So keep that secret and safe and hidden. All right. So to create a certificate, you're basically going to go around and play around with Xcode. So I'll just do it here for you guys. Yeah. So if you go to Xcode and you go to Preferences, and a thing to remember is that when you're managing certificates and provisioning profiles, you're probably going to have to do this a lot. So Xcode Preferences brings this up. And you'll see I have an Adobe software and my own sort of Apple ID here. So to actually create a certificate, you go to kind of the team that you want to use. I'm not going to do the whole process because I already got mine set up, but essentially you kind of go here. Because I already have them, they only say reset. But if you go into your own and if you don't have them, they'll have like a create sort of button here. So you can see there's create here. So if I really wanted these ones, I could do that, but sometimes that's not so good to play around with. Create the buttons there. And if everything goes well, it will show up in your member center. So if I go to developer.app, log in here. Yeah, if all goes well, you should see your certificate pop up in here. So either a development or production certificate will show up here. And as well, in your keychain access. If you ever find yourself having certificate issues, I would recommend going to the keychain access as the first thing you do and making sure your certificates are okay. So I got my certificate right here, and you notice I can expand this. If you can't expand this, that means something's wrong. That means like your certificate's either out of date or it's invalid or it's not being properly signed by the server somehow. So always make sure you can expand it, and there's this little green check mark here. So that's the one I had a lot of trouble with when I started dealing with iOS for the developer app, where I guess maybe a certificate went out of date. I don't manage like the corp certificates, so sometimes they do something on their end, and I don't find out about it until it breaks. So go here, you'll find out what's going on, or at least help you debug it, the errors. So that just kind of went over that. And to create your store provisioning profile, there's really three types. There's development, ad hoc, and store. For the app submission, you will definitely need a store provisioning profile. However, there's actually a little, I was reading the docs the other day, and there's an interesting fact that you can actually upload your app to the store if you only have a distribution certificate and you didn't enable any app services, which is interesting, kind of like little tidbit of information.
Could you just explain the three differences? Like, I don't understand what ad hoc is.
Ad hoc? Okay, yeah. So provisioning profile for development is kind of like it matches with like the development signing certificate. So it's just basically your own developer, you're creating your app on your own machine, and you want to sign and actually install into your app. So the provisioning profile also includes devices, UIDs that can install onto. So not anyone can just install the app, right? It has to be a certain selected amount of people that you allow in the member center. I'll go into that in a second. An ad hoc deployment, that is used for if you want to use testing services. So I think if you want to use like TestFlight or Hockey app, if they don't have Xcode to build the app, if you provisioned with an ad hoc deployment and have their devices on there, they can go and download like the test app from one of those services, and they can run it. Basically, yeah, it's for people who don't have Xcode and they can't build the app themselves, in general cases. And for the store app, it's for submitting to the store, pretty much.
You can build without Xcode?
In a sense, where you have kind of like a continuous integration server or like some sort of service that you upload your project up to, and it builds it for you. And you give them the ad hoc provisioning profile, and then people can go on to like the special like link on their website to download the app. So they don't need Xcode in the sense to do like a test build or something like that. And the PhoneGap actually developer app does that too. We have the Hockey app. So for every kind of change we make on one of our development branches, it will automatically upload to the Hockey app. And whoever has sort of the credentials for the Hockey app, they can see the changes directly on their phone right away without having to compile or sign anything on their own. It's all taken care of. Does that explain it?
Yeah, I use AppLay, so that would fall into the hockey app category.
AppLay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not familiar with all the services, but I guess there's a number out there.
When
but-
TestFlight got bought by Apple, I moved to AppLay.
Oh yeah, you wanted the Android support, I guess? Or,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. That was kind of unfortunate that TestFlight decided to just drop Android and try to ship. There you go. Where was that? Oh yeah, okay. So if you want to create your provisioning profile, you know, it's kind of the same thing where you're going into your member center. You know, you go here, create a new one. Oh, it's grayed out for me. Maybe I don't have the credentials. Oh, guess I don't have the credentials for sale. Okay, well, that's okay. Basically, it's just like a wizard that kind of guides you through. So maybe the Apple Docs is a little more. There we go. Yeah. So creating a provisioning profile, you go into the member center, you get the plus icon. It'll kind of guide you through this wizard. You pick iOS or TV OS app development, like iOS, obviously. Want to do iOS apps. And then it further goes down to, okay, which kind of distribution profile you want to pick, App Store, ad hoc, or the TV stuff I've never dealt with before. And after that, you name your profile and attach all the devices you want to. It doesn't really show that there, but if I go here in my provision profile, see we have like these devices you register in your member center. So if I click on one of these provisioning profiles, should say which one's which. Maybe not. Well, anyways, your provisioning profile is matched to UUIDs that you upload and your certificate, your development or your distribution certificate. So when you create your development, your distribution certificate, in this wizard here, when you create the provisioning profile, you attach that to the specific certificate, you attach it to a specific UUID, so it's very specific on how who gets what, who can download the device, who can run it. So if you ever encountered a problem where you're trying to download like a test test build and it's not going for you, it might be because you don't have your UUID actually on that provisioning profile. So someone's got to go in there, add you in, and then you'd probably be able to do it. And a good way to think about provisioning profiles is that it contains your certificate. So if your certificate goes out of date, likely the first error you'll see, your provisioning profile will say like, oh, there's an error in your provisioning profile. So you're going to have to regenerate a certificate and then redo the provisioning profile to match the new certificate that comes in. So that's another debugging step that I had to go through. All right, but after that, after all that, once that's all set up, then you can finally build a CLI. And for the developer app, we've actually been using this build config flag here. And I don't think it's documented anywhere else, but it's kind of like, I guess we're like the first ones really using it. And really what it does is it points to the development and the distribution code sign identities and the provisioning profiles associated with it. So this is like a really easy way for us to build on command line without having to manually go into the Xcode to sign something. Where the old way is basically build the kind of your project, you go into Xcode, then you go into, just show here, then you go into.
But it still has to be on a Mac, right?
It still has to be on a Mac. That's one of the downfalls for iOS. There's just no really way around it.
There apparently are though. But
well, we do have the build services and stuff, and when you use like a build PhoneGap.com, I'm not sure if we're still offering that service, but the way that you would do it there, you upload your certificates and provisioning profiles there, and then they'll give you like an IPA back, and then you can upload it to the App Store. But yeah, the old way is like you prepare your project, and then you go into like the build settings, the code signing thing here, and you make sure the things are correctly set, and then you can compile and have your IPA to upload to the store. But using this build config method allows us to sign without having to go into there. But the workflow for it is a little dicey, because the provisioning profile here, you see it's kind of X'd out. The name that goes, or the value that goes in there is the name of the provisioning profile as exists in your system. So the way you find out what the name of your provisioning profile is that you go back into that Xcode preferences, click on one of these, and you can see here I got all these provisioning profiles, but these names are just labels. You can't just put like Mac team provisioning profile into that XXX part. What you actually have to do is right-click it, show in Finder, and you get this string of information here. Please don't look at that file.
So it's 90,
I'm sure it's
577.
And after you have that, you pop it in there, and then away you go. And that in itself is also a little tricky. So if you update your provisioning profile, sometimes it's a little difficult to navigate to where it is on your system, because I just showed it's just numbers, and sometimes I kind of do it by date to see which was the last provisioning profile I added in. And the way you install provisioning profiles actually is also a bit of a process in software. We have these provisioning profiles here in our own keys repo. So when we sign the developer app, we actually have a private GitHub repo that we symlink into, and see our build config JSONs right here. I won't open it, but yeah. And we also got our provisioning profiles in here. And the way you install them is you double click them here, or you go into your Xcode and you make sure you just hit download all. So it's in the member center, it should be there. But if you want to like have distributed amongst your team and make sure things are there, you can just kind of hand things over to people and just double click them and they'll install. That's just what I just went over. Yeah, and of course there's the old way of building iOS apps. Just go through Xcode. Make sure everything's prepared.
This XML snippet that you showed here,
The Config Xml or the JSON?
oh, the JSON snippet, is there anything that you could lift out of a Xcode configuration file to pop into that?
I wouldn't recommend it. I've never done that before. Maybe. I don't know, Shads?
So how do you get the codes, how do you make sure you have the right code sign identity? Or is that associated with
the provisioning profile. So remember how the provisioning profile has like a certificate assigned to it? So that certificate is either going to be your development one or your distribution one. And whatever you name your provisioning profile, you got to make sure it's so like provisioning profile distribution. You go into the accounts thing and you pop in the code that way. Like I said, it's not an ideal workflow. It's still kind of, kind of piecing things together, and it's kind of brittle in a sense. But if you don't want to go through Xcode, that's the way you can kind of do it on your own system.
And where does it put the APK file?
You mean the IPA file?
Right, the IPA file.
Oh, it'll populate it in like your project folder /platform/iOS/build device, and it'll be there. That's where all the iOS build stuff always goes to. Yeah, and so when you build with your app with Xcode, you can actually hit product and archive. And once you do that, that's like a compilation step where it takes all your signing keys, packages everything together, ready for the store distribution. So you can see here it's kind of going through this. And then once it's done, it'll open up the organizer tool. You can go to the organizer tool yourself by going Window Organizer. But it'll do it automatically after this is done. Just takes a little bit, I guess. So succeeded. And you can see I have all my archive previous app versions here. And you can validate, and you can also upload to the App Store right here and there. But usually when I go through like the CLI way, I'll have my IPA kind of in that build folder, and I'll use Application Loader to actually upload the app. So those are the two ways to upload to the App Store once you have your IPA. But I'll go into that a little later. Moving on.
Which is easier?
Which is easier?
Using application loader or?
I used to do Organizer, but then they changed it, and then I used Application Loader. But then once I went to Application Loader, yeah, they changed it to Organizer again. So I haven't used it in a while. So I don't know which one's actually easier now, but I always use Application Loader because internally we kind of have this, we have an ad hoc provisioning profile, and I feel like that's just the document that you need to say how to upload the app for like Adobe internally. And it's like, I'm just not going to question it, I'm just going to follow this doc. So hopefully that's, you know, nothing's too crazy there. But I think they're about the same. I think they're really the same process. It seems to me like once you upload to the App Store, like here in the organizer or in the application loader, it goes through like a verifying step where it takes about like 20 minutes, where it's like, it goes into your IPA and make sure like your ID, your assets, like the icons and all that kind of stuff are all set correctly. And then if everything is okay, then it'll be up in the App Store. But everything, if something fails, it'll tell you right then and there. But yeah, it takes like 20 minutes, so like go grab a coffee once you upload it. All right, now on to the easier ones, Android. So to submit your Android app to the App Store, you're going to have to use a Java tool called Key Tool to generate a key store file. And it's pretty straightforward, even though the command is a little verbose. This is kind of like the syntax that generates a key store file. And I've kind of had an example thing here, so it's probably more useful to kind of go back to this page and just kind of fill in blanks for yourself. But essentially, once you run this key tool, you're going to provide the password and a few kind of questions to, I guess, increase the entropy of the key store password. And once you have that, it'll generate an actual file. So if I go back to the Android one here, you can see we have our own PhoneGap app key store in there. And then once you want to actually upload your app to the Google Play Store, you use the jar signer tool to sign your APK file with that key store file. And then you can upload it. And so for every other update of your app, you always have to sign with the same key store file. Otherwise, it's going to reject you. And so building your app with the CLI, it's the same kind of thing with iOS, where we're using build config again. But it's slightly different layout where you're providing the path to the key store file, you give it the passwords that you've given it, and the alias. The one thing I'm not too certain on, and I've always left blank, is this key store type. Not sure if that's, you have to set that or not, but it's always worked for me like this, so hopefully it doesn't break for you.
What does Adobe use for their Xcode equivalent?
Xcode equivalent? Do you
For,
use Xcode?
for Android.
Oh, for Android.
Sorry.
Android Studio.
I've always just used. I just compile things on this, the command line, but I think Android Studio is the one that most people use. Yeah.
If you're not using Android Studio now, you're falling behind.
Yeah. And
They don't support Eclipse anymore. So.
yeah.
But I found Android Studio has a problem with the rendering of Cordova or PhoneGap applications. I don't know whether you've found that.
Sorry, rendering?
Rendering, when it presents it on the device itself.
Nope, I've never ended up in a million years.
Okay.
No.
Sorry, I don't know.
We'll have to just find one of us after the workshop, because I would like to see that.
Yeah, I don't have it on this computer.
Oh, okay.
Well, then get our contact.
Email. But yeah, I think also in Android Studio, there's like a tool inside that also generates a key store. So if this is a little too much on the command line, I think there's like a wizard there that offers, so you can do it that way. Finally, Windows. So Windows, you obviously need a Windows machine, and you need.
For the Android submission has a question. So you said the jar signer, right? Sign the APK, and do we need to zip align the APK before the submission to the
Sorry, do you need to what?
zip align?
Zip line?
Zip align. That's if you're manually doing it. And before you can actually submit it to the Google Play, it actually rearranges the bits so that they're more compressed
Oh, really?
together. So you can't actually upload it to Google Play without actually doing zip align on the command line. So if
Really?
you're using the build tool like Android Studio or Eclipse, it will do that for you automatically. It's like after you create the APK, you sign it, then you run the zip line, you can take that APK.
I never had to do that.
So the zip align is not necessary.
You do need, if you do command line build, but
I've done command line builds, but I never had to use it. Now I'm confused.
So you do command line and you don't use the zip
you submit
align.
it to Google Play.
Yeah, that's the way I've always done it. Like I just kind of do PhoneGap, build, Android.
Well, I think, yeah, probably because the
Is
packager
it-
automatically does that.
Oh, okay, so it's probably built
If
into
you
the
do it
tool.
one by one in native Android, you have to do it yourself.
Oh, okay, so that's probably it then. So in the PhoneGap tool, I guess it does it for you automatically. Okay. That's why I
I mean, if you specify your sign-in key after the key tool generates, then I'm sure it does.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. That's good to know. All right. Well, anyways, Windows Phone. Yeah. So on Windows, you're going to need Visual Studio and a Windows machine, but you can use VMware like I do. Let's start that up. But yeah, for building a Windows app on Windows, it's pretty straightforward. Basically, you just run the PhoneGap build command on release flag, and then it will generate the XAP file in the project folder under like platforms, WPA, bin release, and it's always named as Cordova app podge _release _ any CPU, which is kind of funny. But otherwise, I mean, if you want to build it through Visual Studio, I always like to run the build command anyways, and then so all the files are kind of populated in the Visual Studio and nothing's missing. And the way to just run it off Visual Studio is make sure this drop-down is on release, this is on device, and you hit the green button, and it'll do pretty much the same thing as the command line tool. Let's do an example of that. What is my password button? Oh no. So yeah, this is like the Visual Studio project that I have for the PhoneGap developer app. So yeah, we go platforms, WP8, open up that solution. Opens it up.
Did you just switch computers?
No, I'm on VMware.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a nice thing actually. I can distribute Windows app on my Mac machine if you have VMware. Yeah, I highly recommend it actually if you want to kind of switch between Mac.
I've got VirtualBox, but it's real slow.
Oh yeah? This is a little slow too, but this computer is decent enough that it's not too bad. But the whole Windows key and like the command key being the same thing is always messes me up. So yeah, just do that. And once you hit that, it'll build the project for you. Nothing too hard about that. Windows is actually quite nice in what you need to do. All right. So that's packaging. Now for actually submitting the app, of course, iOS requires more than anyone else. So if you haven't already created like the App Store record in the App Store, you're going to have to do that under iTunes Connect. So when you go here, go in the App Store, My Apps, and you can hit New App here, and that'll guide you through a wizard to create the whole app stuff. But in general, once you create an app, there's a few things that you do need, like application icons to be used for the App Store and the feature listing, a minimum of 1 screenshot per locale. So if you're distributing to other languages, you can set the screenshots for those. But of course, I mean, Apple has their own guideline of the screenshot. Is this the right? There it goes. Yeah. So they have like the screenshot properties. It's probably better for you to really go into this document to really understand what you need to do for the screenshots because they're quite specific. Yeah. And you can also upload a video, but that's optional. But in your Config XML, you definitely need to set your home screen app icon.
I don't think it's optional anymore, the video.
Oh, with the developer app, we don't have a video.
Okay.
Maybe going forward, they might say that you need a video, but I don't think you do.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, in the Config XML, this is where you kind of define where to set your application icons, your splash screen, your notification icons, all that good stuff. So if I go into our repo here for the developer app, you can see we have resources, icons. We got all the icons listed out here. That's the way we kind of structured our project file. And they're all kind of linked in that config XML file. So if I open this up, yeah, you can see under iOS, I've got this all set there. Same thing with Android, same thing with Windows Phone. And it's just easier to kind of set those in this file because otherwise you're going to have to go through like Xcode or Visual Studio to manually do those. So it's a nice little time-saving step, especially if you don't check in your platform files in like a repository or any other kind of version control. What we do actually do in the developer app is that we don't check in the platform folders at all. We generate them all the time every time we do our release commands, which makes it easier for us to update plugins or make updates to certain parts of the app without having to touch other parts. That's just our process. I'm sure you'll have your own. And of course, the App Store has its own huge customization guide to go through if you really want to be the iOS app of the year. Yeah, and so like I was saying before, so now it's time to actually send your IPA to the App Store once you create that application record. So if I go into the iTunes App Store, we'll go into my own. I've already done this before, so you'll have to imagine that I clicked this before. So you can see there's this new record here, and it's yellow and saying preparing for submission. So once I hit that plus icon, it's going to create this. And in here is just like it's a wizard. Basically, you can say what's new in this version. You can modify your videos, screenshots, change descriptions, keywords, all the good stuff. But in that previous step where I described, using Organizer and Archive to upload to iTunes, this is where it's going to show up. So if I actually upload it and it got accepted, there will be like a little dialog here to say select which build that you uploaded, and you will select the specific sort of thing that you uploaded. You can upload multiple times for a particular submission, so you can have different builds, I guess. But pick one, and that'll be set. And yeah, of course, just more kind of paperwork, really. So there's one thing I should keep note of is your review information. So the developer app has its own kind of like way of testing. I think basically if you open up the developer app, it's not clear to the tester what they should do to actually test the app itself to make sure it's okay. So we have a little instruction thing here, just a little blurb saying how to actually test the app. Of course, I feel like more information to help the reviewer to do their thing, because it does take a while. It takes about, for at least the developer app, it takes about 7 days to get through the store after you submit. And yeah, having the email contact there, it'll email you saying like your app has been submitted, your app is in review, your app is finished reviewed, and ready for release to the store. And also, you can also set the sort of version release. So we've always set it to manually release, because that's just how we roll, I guess. But you can always set, automatically release after it's been reviewed, or you can set it automatically release after the time has been, some time. So however you want to do it, it's up to you. I went over this part. Over expectations.
Were you going to touch on anything like pricing or anything like that? Because I just am going through this horror thing with non-renewing subscriptions.
Oh, really? Yeah, I can't really go into the pricing thing because in my own experience, I've only done the developer app, and it's a free sort of app, so I've never actually touched on the pricing models. So I can't really help you there, I'm sorry. Yeah, and of course, after reviewing, Apple has common app rejections. You might want to take a look at this page, because you don't want to be dinged on the review process where you're waiting for a couple of days, something goes wrong, and just restart the whole process again. It can be a little tiring. And sometimes you'll find yourself having a little back and forth with the reviewer. Like, they won't know how to do something, so you have a little email kind of conversation. And eventually you'll get yourself up to the App Store.
Do you have those links, those Apple links in the document?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you go to this wiki page, if you click those, they should go there. And for submitting for Android, it's pretty much the same kind of process. You go to the Google Play Store, you add a new application. So I'll do that quickly. Let's see here. Yeah, you can hit New Application here, and I'll guide you through the wizard to create your new application. Or if you're like me, you already got your app up there, and you can see a whole bunch of things up here. But the APK one is usually the one that you want to take a look at. And basically, once you have your APK file, you just upload it through this interface. And for us on the developer, PhoneGap developer app team, we just go straight to production. There's no review process in the Google Play Store. So if you want to release, you can release as quick as you want. But it takes about a couple of hours for it actually to propagate through the store and see the updates. But there are like ways to kind of do a stage rollout that I've never tried before, but there's like a beta and alpha testing. And I think the way that works is you have like kind of a group of individuals who are signed up for the beta or alpha
Just
test.
like test flight.
Yeah, yeah. They'll get the email and they can install it and they can provide feedback or whatever.
Free, I have to use Google Plus, so that's a minus.
There you go. Yeah, and so because there's no review process, you better make sure your app works. Otherwise, you might get a whole bunch of angry users and 1-star you. So make sure it works. But of course, I guess you can always publish a new version really quickly. Let's see. Oh yeah, and the other things you can do is kind of like the other app store. Your app store listing, you can change all the information that you want to do. A lot of these values are populated by the Config Xml. You can see that the description is there already. I think we provide our own short description, the graphic assets. I think you do need to upload the high-res icon, the feature graphic, and the promo graphic, as well as these screenshots. And set the categorization. And go through this mini questionnaire about who can use your app and what age is rated. Kind of interesting. So yeah, after that you submit to the App Store or Google Store. Just talked about that. And now for the Windows Dev Store. Again, same process. If you haven't created your App Store listing for the Dev Store. Yeah, see, this is the weird thing about the Dev Store for Windows is that to log into that one thing, I have to do this. All right, so I'm logging into that one magical box that does everything for us. Hopefully I'm not booting someone out. All right, here we go. So the Windows Dev Center, this is where you do all your app-related things on Windows. And yeah, like the same kind of process. If you want to create a new app, you have to go to the dashboard overview. And then there's another kind of like, create a new app, another wizard you just go through where you upload your screenshots, you upload icons and optional promo images. And on the store listing page, you can set the pricing, availability, properties, same kind of stuff that you saw previously. And the Windows Dev Center, or Dev Store, actually does have a review process. So we can do this. And it's kind of like a combination of like the Google Play and the Apple Store, where it's really easy to submit a new sort of update to your app, but there is a review process at the end of it. So I have this new submission I did before, and it makes you go through this wizard, so you can change things here. And if you set them once already, it saves that information for you, so you don't have to modify them again. And if you don't want to modify anything other than the package itself, you just upload the package and do a short questionnaire of saying if you have any sort of advertising things in your app that you added or whatever, and then you just submit, and it's ready to review. And usually it takes a couple of days, like 3 days or so, pretty quick. And there's no email actually attached to the review process, so I always have to kind of come back here every day, check on the submission process. And it'll just have a green check mark if it's good to go. And yeah, that completes this workshop, I guess. If you want to go through case-by-case examples to help you sign your apps or got questions, RTAs are here, on here. Sure.
For the Windows submission, so if you submit for the architecture ARM, right? I can see from the
Yeah.
Instead of specific app to Windows Store, how you package the app, combining the architecture X like 84 or 64, and 86 or 64 also ARM.
Oh, okay. Never had to do that before. My guess is that, that's a good question. I think if you submit to like the Windows Phone Store, it only accepts one certain type of architecture.
Yeah, Windows Phone is only accepts ARM.
Yeah.
But, for Windows, there is Windows 10. There is.
Oh, you want to submit to the other stores?
UWP, right?
Okay,
Uniform
okay. So
Windows
in that
platform.
case, I think what you would have to do is, set it to that CPU, and then probably create another XAP, and then submit it to this, like the Windows Store, not the Windows Phone Store, because those are two different things. Like on here, this is just all for Windows Phone.
Okay.
Yeah, like I play around with this. I don't even know if we have like a Windows Store, because this is all just Windows Phone, I believe. Yeah, I think that's like a different portion of this Windows Dev Center. If I can find it. I think that's how it works. Thanks, Windows. Yeah, we should have Jesse here. Jesse is the Windows guy, so he would know how to answer that question directly. Because I can't answer off the top of my head. If I get in touch with you, it'd follow up on you. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I mean, I've got a question that's kind of off topic.
Sure.
Nobody else has anything. This is a really great guide, by the way. Thank you so much for putting this together. And for me, that document right there is worth the whole conference.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, it's just step by step, and not that I can't do these things, but I give these instructions to other people,
Oh yeah.
and they try and go through the official docs, and they're
It's
lost.
everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
So just having it collected together and like synthesized is really valuable.
I can't take all the credit. Actually, like our Holly Shlinsky, she has. I based these docs actually on her guidelines here. She has like kind of like she wrote like a little tutorial back, I guess almost a year ago. It seems like, and I was just looking at her docs, like, oh wait, there's like this unpublished section of the docs, and I'm like, this is kind of like what I'm talking about right here. So. Of course, and I got the developer app experience where I'm uploading and submitting to the App Store, so I got that too, and I feel like I kind of collected all the information in one place. And
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully, if you have issues, submit them. We can change this doc. It would be great for everyone.
Oh, we could download and.
Yeah, it's just I don't
Do
know if you can download
pull
a
request?
wikis per se. Like this is a repo and it has a wiki on top, but I'm sure
Yeah.
you can like add issues and change it and always come back to this
Oh,
GitHub
I see.
repo
Okay.
and then just go through it. Yeah.
One question I have, I need to talk to somebody about this, is Windows installation of PhoneGap.
Windows installation function.
That we have not gotten it working on a single Windows box yet. Now, we
Really?
haven't tried that many, and my guess is that the problems are all due to incompatibilities of Windows version versus Visual Studio version.
Interesting. Yeah.
So maybe, I mean, I could go ask one of the Visual Studio people. They
Yeah.
probably would have more info, but did you guys it just worked, everything was fine, or?
There was definitely some configuration. Like the way I use my Windows setup is that I have the MingGW kind of like command prompt, so I can use like git commands and node in there.
Nice.
And then there was also some setting up of Visual Studio as well. I think you need a very specific version. Professional, I think it is, because if you don't have that one, you can't actually deploy to a phone. So make sure you have that specific version. And I think there's also some path management you got to do so MingW works like the MS Build tool. I think you gotta have that in your path, and a few other things. And that's
Yeah,
how
we
I
went
got
through a
to
lot of various Stack Overflow articles
Oh,
that
yeah.
said this is the accepted solution. Install this version of Visual Studio, install Node GPY,
Yeah.
GYP, and that's where we end up. And then install Python. And you
Oh,
have to do it in
really?
a certain order.
Really? I
And we
mean,
did all that, and we
yeah.
added the path stuff. Node GYP keeps crashing, and so Node won't even fully install.
We actually had
that's-
that problem this morning in the beginner's talk, the new
Yeah.
GYP. Now the thing is, we have a few folks here from Microsoft that
Yeah.
I can put you in front of.
Yeah,
and,
please.
yeah.
All right, I'll come see you. We'll go
Sure.
talk to him.
Like I'll go just like sit you down with Ryan. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
Ryan, somebody wants to talk.
Because I've run through all of this stuff on Mac, and it all works perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, little hiccups, but nothing serious.
I think there's a package that you can get from Microsoft that installs like a version of Visual Studio plus all of the Cordova tooling. With like, yeah, so they just put everything all together and do it for you instead of having to piecemeal it yourself. Yeah. So we'll find Ryan.
I don't know what it is about my password, but it doesn't like it a lot. There you go. Yeah, I've been actually pretty lucky about my Windows setup. Like, because this is VMware, it's just an image that we actually pass around on our team. So one person kind of got it going, and it's
Yeah.
like, hey, bring it over here. And
Is
yeah,
it Windows 8 or 10?
this is Windows 8. I haven't upgraded, so
Maybe we could check the version of Visual Studio in there.
sure, yeah. Once it finishes booting, because it's
Sure.
stupidly restarted.
You didn't really talk about the pricing. Can you change prices on the App Store once you're submitted?
I believe so.
Price
I'll-
is what, like to buy the app price?
And then the other thing is there a way, and this might be out of scope, is there a way to offer a free version and a paid version?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's two different apps.
Yeah.
If you're specifically talking about the iOS App Store, you want to start with a price, and then you're only allowed to come down from that price. You're never allowed to go above it. So if you want to start charging more, you'll have to add a new app in.
I mean, my exact problem is that the client wants to offer it at a price, but to academia, he wants it free.
Two separate versions
Yeah.
of the app?
Two separate versions of the app, or in-app purchasing, where you
But then how would you restrict it to people?
you give academia codes in order to enable the paid parts of your application.
Okay.
But yeah, you might
Just
just
get
it
security
seems
changes.
logical to have two separate versions.
Did my password work? Oh, I did. Okay.
Well, that might have just justified my trip here.
Yay, everyone's going.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Visual Studio Professional 2013 is what I got. And where is my
And it's not Express? Oh, it's Professional.
It's professional, yeah. I believe that's
When you do Visual
definitely the
Studio,
version
it
you need
comes
to
with
have,
it.
is professional. And yeah, this is what I use for my Git stuff. And it has Node installed as well. Yeah, that process of installing Node was a little hairy because I wanted to update it to the latest Node, and
You gotta update NPM.
yeah, it was really weird actually. I had to do it a few times, and I don't know what I did to get it to work, but it worked. So I just kind of like, ugh. But yeah, I got like Node kind of running on here.
You can look into Taco, which is what Microsoft did, tools for Apache Cordova. When you
Yeah.
install a new version of the Visual Studio, it's
Here's the URL.
yeah.
And
They
basically,
run through the setup and install all the stuff you need.
Cool. Is that it for time? I think,
Pretty much.
yeah.
yeah,
12.
lunch is at 12. So if there's no more questions, folks can just head over to the same place that we had breakfast this morning.
Oh, it's provided.
And if you still have any more questions, like I think I need to follow up with you about that architecture question for the CPU. You can just email me at timk@adobe.com.
To the Microsoft guys, just like find me, and I'll point them out to you.
Yeah, right after lunch.
Cool.
That's me. Alrighty. I guess that concludes this workshop. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Tim, have you ever made two people's day in the same day before?
Yes, but they're both named me.
No.
Oh, do your thing break? The little
Yeah.
tab? You're not the first one. You're like number 3 I think today.
If I install Visual, Android Studio, in my app on it, you can look at
Yeah.
it. What's your name?
Simon.
I'm Lou.
Nice to meet you.
Okay.
Yeah, there's Android Studio shouldn't cause any kind of jankiness with your app whatsoever. It's
Because it renders fine on, I know it's embarrassing, the Eclipse. But, I mean, I really don't, they didn't talk about this in the intro, but Ripple.
right. Yeah.
I use
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I try to never go to those because it's so slow. You know?
Yeah.
Android emulators are all sucked before Android Studio came along.
Yeah, and they're still not back there.
And there's another one that I was using also from out of Australia. And there was an emulator out of Australia, I can't remember the name of it.
Jetty Motion.
Yeah, Jenny Motion,
They're at France. Yeah.
France.
That is currently the best emulator that you can get.
Okay.
But yeah.
So what just happened?
Oh, it's going to download. It's finished. So yeah. Alright.
I'm gonna go, well,
Yeah, go eat.
I have to, I have to download the app.
Yeah, sure. Just go eat, find me. I'll be around today and tomorrow. So, and if we don't connect there, maybe we'll find some way to do it over email or Twitter or Slack or
Okay.
something like that.
Great.
All right.
Thank you. I'm glad a lot of what I've been doing is off by myself, but at least I'm confirming a lot of the things. Like the
Yeah.
thing he just said about Jenny Motion.
I've already seen it.
Have it installed with, you can use it as an emulator with one of them, I don't know.
Well, what kind of Android devices are you targeting? Phones or tablets?
No, phone.
Phones. So
Well,
you can get.
tablets and phones.
I
No,
always.
I have it running on my phone.
So yeah, the best way to do it is just to test on the device.
I know, but you know, it's hard to develop. This is the app. So I mean, it's pretty close to, well, this was actually the thing. I'm at this stage now of getting it. So this doesn't really purchase it.